Welcome to Turn the Page, the official podcast of the Syosset Public Library.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Turn the Page. I'm your host today, Jen, and today I am joined by the author of several mysteries, but of one in particular that we are here to discuss today. It was just published yesterday, I believe, as of the recording of this episode, and it is such a delight. It is the right mix of cozy and not cozy, let's say, in its sort of darker mystery elements, but it is such a delightful read filled with really, really, really great characters. It's really the hook that I am enjoying so much. I've been rambling a lot already, so let's introduce our author. Welcome. Could I ask you to introduce yourself and your book, please?
Yes, thank you, Jen. Thank you for having me. Yes, I'm a former newspaper journalist turned novelist. This is my fourth book. It's quite a departure from my other books. My other mystery books were a little bit darker. This one is more lighthearted. And it involves, my main character is Margaret Finch, and she's a lab assistant for a charismatic botany professor at a small university on the central coast of California, which is where I live. She's 6 feet tall. She's big boned she's got a very plain face that people often describe as being horse-like. She's middle-aged. She drives a 20-year-old truck and lives a solitary life in a cottage up on a hill. She's very meticulous and really a great scientist, but those at the university where she works, often dismiss her for her what they see as eccentricities. She's very regimented. She likes routine. She likes schedule. She notices details. She tells the truth whether people want to hear it or not. And so, she kind of rubs people the wrong way sometimes. But when there's an unexpected death on the campus, those traits turn out to be excellent for being an amateur sleuth, because the university believes that the death is from natural causes, but she believes it might be a murder. So with the help of she's got a night custodian and one of her coworkers, she works to untangle the murder and find out who the killer is. And I also like to say there's also a one-eyed cat. So yes. So it is cozy, but it's also kind of traditional mystery too. Yeah. It kind of falls in between the two, I would say.
Yeah, it's a really impressive tightrope act, I would say, because it is very warm and inviting because the characters are so quirky yet so they really pull you in and quite charming in their own ways. And it's, one of my favorite things about mysteries is that they are a really good way of shining a light on a subculture or a closed system. And you do that really well here for an academic science lab. So I'm curious about what was the inception point for this? Was it wanting to work in that setting or with a particular character type or the tone? Where did it all start for you?
Oh, well, that's a great question. So it was my editor who suggested that I write a mystery that was more lighthearted, not quite so dark. And at first I was like, I used to be a newspaper reporter. I covered horrible murder trials and I met serial killers. And so for me, murder was always dark. And I thought, I don't know how I can write this. But then, I thought of Agatha Christie and I thought of Richard Osman and his Thursday Murder Club. And I thought, well, I love those books. So maybe I can make murder lighthearted and charming. So I think for me, the first thing that happened was I found my character. So Margaret Finch, I worked at UC Santa Cruz for a while too. And I met these amazing scientists and I just love scientists. And so I wanted her to be a scientist. I thought a university was a great setting because it's like a bubble in lots of ways. There's, young students that are looking for adventure and experiences. There's professors that can be very ego-driven sometimes. There is research that's going on that's new and cutting edge, and sometimes the possibility could fall in the wrong hands or turn the wrong way. And I just thought that that's a perfect play. And there's a lot of competition there too, competition for grades, competition for grants. So I thought it would be a great setting. So with that in mind, I started thinking about Margaret. And one day she just kind of popped into my head as this tall, big boned, plain looking woman in middle age. And I liked it. And the name popped in my head first, Margaret Finch. And so from there, I began developing her character, and I just loved her. She was so fun to be with.
I love her too. It's really, really fun getting to spend time in her head in this story. I she's prickly for sure, and she does, as you said, rub some people the wrong way. But she has a really strong moral code, and she's very committed to doing what she thinks is right and addressing injustice, which makes her really, I think, relatable and I think a really good protagonist for this story. I'd love to know more about working with that academic setting. Before I became to work in this library, I was a history PhD. So some might call me like a failed academic, even though I feel successful here. But
I think you
and
are.
yeah, thank you. And so a lot of like the rivalry, the competition, the underhandedness, a lot of that felt really accurate. Even though I think, medieval history is not quite as high stakes as, oncology research. But could you talk a little bit more about, using your own experience at UC Santa Cruz and perhaps what other kind of research you did to bring that setting and all of its residents to life?
Once as a reporter, I interviewed Jane Smiley, and I asked her how she created some of her emotional scenes. And she said what she did is take us something small, like being in a department store and losing sight of your kid for a second, and that feeling of panic that you felt, and then expand it to when you wrote about a kidnapping, for example. So for me, UC Santa Cruz is a great school. I love the people there. People are doing such amazing work. But I saw little hints of things like the competition for grants, and who was going to get the next big appointment. And so I took that and blew it up basically into something more not farcical, I don't want to say, but just have higher stakes, and would be the setting for a murder scene. And also, so I never went to graduate school, but my sister is a scientist. And so I mined her for great lab stories. So she managed a lab for a little bit, and she was kind enough to write me like 10 things that bugged her the most as a lab manager. And, including people hoarding supplies so that when somebody came time to do an experiment, there were no beakers around. And so she would have to go hunt them down. So I used that experience, her experience, and wove it into my experience in academia. But like I said, it's exaggerated. I took a small thing and made it bigger. Although I don't doubt there's some universities where that competition to be number one and to be shine, in the university system does happen. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a really marked or it's a really like spot on, I guess, almost like satire, I think, of some of those dynamics in academia because it is so heightened, but while still feeling like very resonant to probably how it feels to be inside that system and, experiencing all those forces upon you. I'd love to ask a little bit more about Margaret because I really do love her perspective. And I'd love to know specifically about choosing like the traits that you did, because something that occurred to me while I was reading was that, I think you deal here a lot with like the sort of the invisibility of middle-aged women in society and how she has struggled with that a lot throughout her life. But it kind of makes her a really good sleuth, like it contributes to why she's so good at what she does. Like, could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I'd be happy to talk about that because you're right. Middle-aged women just suddenly you become invisible. You're going along and people talk to you and see you, and then you hit middle age and you're like, well, what happened? I have opinions. I have good traits. I have things that I can do. I've accomplished all this stuff. and all of a sudden nobody pays attention to you, you know. So I wanted her to be middle-aged because I think middle age also gives you the courage to stand up for what you believe. You know, you've probably gone through hard times. You've probably been challenged at work. You've probably had people try to put you down. And in middle age, you've dealt with that stuff and you have more confidence than when you're younger. So I think middle age gave her that chance to have courage, to stand up for what she believed in, you know, to have grit. I think middle-aged women are so underestimated. So I was excited to write about her as a middle-aged woman. As for her traits, I think one of the, I have to confess here that I'm also very organized. I like things to be organized. My spice drawer is alphabetized. I like everything to have its place. And so again, I took that thing that I do and I just blew it up for Margaret. So she wears the same blouse for each day of the week. You know, she wears one blouse on Tuesday, another blouse on Wednesday. She has times for when she waxes her floor in her cabin, like 4 o'clock on Saturday. It's time to wax the floors. So I use that trait as one of her traits. And the other attention to detail is, as a reporter, you have to pay attention to detail. But as a scientist, you also pay attention to detail. Scientists, you know, gather facts, they see things, they ask questions. And I thought, well, that makes a perfect sleuth. That's what a good detective does. So I added all those qualities into her.
Nice. Yeah, I'm really interested too in her relationship to her routine. She has a lot of rituals and a very, as you just mentioned, strict routine that she likes to maintain. And I am interested in like the kind of double-edged sword of that because as somebody who also loves my routines and loves like feeling comfortable in my, everyday rituals, it protects you and it makes your life predictable and comfortable and stable, but it can also make it like kind of small in some ways, which isn't always a bad thing because Margaret enjoys like this sort of like the beautiful smallness of her life. But there is like a little bit of, ambivalence toward that. So yeah, I'm kind of curious about that aspect. And, as you say, how it does make her like a good scientist and a good sleuth. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I would It was very important for me to have Margaret's past inform her present. So I did go into part of the reason why she is organized. And I don't want to give anything away, but at one point early in her life, she doesn't pay attention and something bad happens. And from that moment on, she vows to pay attention. And paying attention means noticing details, having your routine. Everything has to be and set up in such a way that nothing bad can happen or go wrong. So I wanted to make those characteristics sort of a protective measure for her. But you're also right. It also isolated her from her. She really didn't have friends and she didn't have people come over. She lived isolated on top of a hill in her little cottage with her garden. So it was isolating, but it was protective for her and it made her feel safe in the world, made her able to function, took care of pushed away some of the guilt she had for what had happened when she was young. So yeah, that was very important to me to have those traits in her. And I looked for a reason to have them, not just that's the way she is. I think a lot of traits often happen because of what's happened in our past.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. And in terms of rounding out the supporting cast, was there a favorite character that you had to write? Was there somebody who was the most challenging to sort of capture on the page? Tell us a little bit about the other residents of this lab.
That's a great question. So there's a postdoc he's on his third postdoc position, doesn't look like he's going to go anywhere. He's kind of very anxious person, very nervous. And when I first wrote him, this was the challenge. When I first wrote him, for the first few chapters, he was just so grumpy. And I thought, oh, Calvin can't be grumpy. You have to be able to like him. And so I struggled with how to make this nervous, anxious person likable and not just grumpy appearing. So, as authors do, we're like magpies. We steal character traits from different people. And I remembered someone I knew who I adored, but was just plagued with anxiousness. And as soon as I thought of that person, I thought, oh, okay, that's Calvin. So once I had that in my head, I was able to write him as a, funny, anxious, but also likable character. You understood what his problems were. And as far as the other character that I can talk about, there's a janitor that's very enigmatic, and his name is Joe. And he just kind of showed up in the book. I needed somebody for Margaret to bounce things off of, and he just kind of showed up. And I won't go into his background, but he's really cool. And so I wrote him, and he was sort of a, third character. And my editor read it and his name is Joe. She said, more Joe. so, so I put more Joe in the book. And so once I had him too, I really enjoyed having more Joe in the book. I thought it led to an ending that I didn't quite expect.
Yeah, I love Joe as well. And it's interesting. He reminded me of a friend I have who still works in a history and who does like the history of college campuses and stuff like that. And she has written about how often custodial staff at universities are sort of invisible because they work at the university, but they're not researchers or professors or they're not students, they occupy this really interesting place, like in this environment. And so I think that that was an interesting thing for Margaret and Joe to share, this sort of like ability to move across campus or through spaces without really being noticed.
Oh, that's so observant of you. You totally got you
Yeah.
totally got why he was a janitor. They do move through spaces and they do see things and notice things that people don't even know they're there, and they might overhear something or see something in somebody's office or yeah, you totally got it. Thank you.
Oh,
Makes
you're
me
so
feel good.
welcome. Yeah, kind of like, bartenders or cab drivers, people tend to act like they are not there and say really interesting things in front of them. So,
Yeah, yeah. No, that was 100% my purpose in putting Joe in the book. And
Mm.
yeah, I didn't think that he and Margaret shared that trait. But he's the one that really accepted her. He he didn't question her. He accepted what she said and what she thought about this death, and just jumped in to help. So yeah, you got it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, this was such a delight, and I'm curious if you think you'll spend more time with these characters. What's on your horizon for writing? Do you have more planned for Margaret or for other characters that you've written in the past?
Yes, well, every author you never quite know, but it depends on how well Margaret does in the marketplace. But I'm hoping she'll do well. I think I'm getting some great reviews and a little bit of buzz, which is fun. So I would like to do another Margaret book. I sort of have started planning one already, and this one I would put in the Sonoran Desert because I visited there and it's just an amazing place. And also there's a lot of things there that can kill you. So oh, a desert, that's a perfect place for a botanist and a perfect place for a murder. So I'm halfway through outlining it, but we'll see what happens if another Margaret is in the future. And I hope she is because I love Margaret and I love Calvin and Joe. So
Yeah.
I hope they come back.
I hope they come back too. And so that means that you, listeners, you have homework. Please check out The Botanist's Assistant. It is such a delightful read. I really think that you will love spending time with these characters and in this really interesting world full of quirky people and interesting intrigue. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. This has been a delight.
Oh, thank you for having me. Your questions were wonderful, and I really appreciated talking with you. And yeah, I hope people enjoy The Botanist Assistant.
All right. Well, you've heard your assignment. Please go check out the book. It's available at your favorite bookstore or library or website. Do you have a bookstore that you like to send people to?
Yes, well, in my hometown, there's a Bookshop Santa Cruz, which I had my event last night, my launch event, and it was wonderful. It's just the best independent bookstore. The people there are so knowledgeable. The books they have are, they curate amazing books. And it's a place where you feel like you're home. And if you're a reader, I see people just sitting on benches reading in there all the time. And the people that run it love books. Um, and I also like word after word books in Truckee, California, because I do spend part of my time up in Lake Tahoe. I have a little cabin up there, and they also are wonderful. The staff is so knowledgeable, and it's just a great bookstore. So those are my two favorite bookstores that I go to.
Oh, excellent. I love to show, indie bookstores a little bit of love. So,
Yes.
all right. Well, thank you all again for joining us. It is now time to close this chapter. We'll see you next time.
It's time to close this chapter of Turn the Page. Join us for the next episode.